All right. Hey, welcome back to the Go for CO channel. This is John the Bomb. Building others means business. And I've got a powerful woman that will give you hope because that's her name. That's like she's giving hope to the world. She's making entrepreneurial inroads in different fields. This one happens to be in the cannabis space. The first Black owned woman, or the youngest Black owned woman cannabis dispensary in the world. Phenomenal stuff. She's entrepreneurial. She's just on stages talking about this industry, giving insights, technology. Let me read a little bit of her bio. So, she's a serial entrepreneur, investor, industry advocate committed to breaking barriers and building businesses that create real impact. Since 2017, she's made history as the youngest Black woman to own a dispensary in the U.S., founding Mary and Main, a Maryland based cannabis dispensary dedicated to education, community empowerment, and access. Hey, Hope, I mean, you're just doing a couple little things. How are you? Thanks for coming on the Go for CO channel.
Oh, thanks, John, for having me, and thank you for the wonderful intro.
Awesome, awesome stuff. Well, hey, look, on the Go for CO channel, we like to keep people engaged right away. How did you think of this? I mean, you're the youngest owned, Black woman business in the cannabis space. Like, what did you make some connections? Were you in the industry? What? Tell us a little bit about this story.
Yeah, no. So it's definitely not like I thought I would be in the cannabis industry and it's what I always wanted to do or anything like that. No, and I didn't really have any inroads or anything like that. So my background, I graduated from Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, with a degree in economics. And I was pursuing a degree, or I was pursuing a career in investment banking. So that's what I was doing every summer. I was going up to New York, working on Wall Street, and I ended up getting a full-time offer at an investment bank in Atlanta, Georgia, where I was living. And I was starting full-time, but in the back of my head, I was always thinking about what my mother taught me. So I was raised by another very strong Black woman who was raised by another strong Black woman before her and another one before her. And I had always heard all the stories about all their entrepreneurial endeavors. And, even my mother, who's a dentist by trade, who owned her own practice, owned real estate, I watched her be an entrepreneur my whole life. And she always taught me to have an entrepreneurial spirit and look for those opportunities to build wealth. So as I was working full time as an equity institutional sales analyst, I'm sitting on a trading floor and I look up on the TV, on CNBC, they're talking about cannabis. This is about 2014, the year I graduated from college. And I'm just seeing all of these new, what they're calling new facts about the industry. And I really understood that this was an industry that was just becoming now regulated and legal. So, I realized they're talking about how big this industry would be, the growth of it. And I realized this would be a unique opportunity for me to get in at the ground floor level of an emerging market. And we know that does not happen very often in someone's lifetime. So I knew this was a unique opportunity to kind of marry all of the skills and, the hard and soft skills that my parents helped to instill in me, as well as the skills that and tools that I've learned throughout school and in my career opportunities, into something that has blossomed into much more than I could have ever imagined. I had no idea that I would be the youngest Black woman to do what I was doing. I wasn't even thinking that way. I just saw an opportunity to build something very unique, and it had a huge runway. And I knew I was getting in at the ground floor level, and that's all that my head was thinking at the time.
Well, I love light bulb moments. As we have CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs on the Go for CO podcast, our community gets to hear, man, those ideas, those things. I mean, you're literally watching a show and you go, I
Yeah.
have an idea. Why don't I get into the industry, right? And really cool stuff. You started, investment bank is a very networked, influential industry in America, right? Obviously, hot Atlanta, so many people, so many industries entered, Georgia and Atlanta over the last 10, 15 years. I know it's like a little mini Hollywood right now and some other, areas and industries. So very, very connected space. And obviously then your roots, your background, your mom, your grandmother, your great grandmother, your great great grandmother, all these entrepreneur bloodlines lead to where you're at. So really, really cool stuff. So Mary and Maine, the name of it in and of itself, we like to also talk about like, well, what was the idea? Do you have any co-founders in that business, or what was it like for you to start to put the wheels in motion for Mary and Maine?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up co-founders because I'd say that's probably how the name really came about. So my co-founders in this opportunity were my mother, who, she was the first person I went to when I realized the opportunity. She raised me to think this way, and I couldn't think of a better partner who also had a healthcare background and a lot of the connections that I realized later would need because you need a lot of local and political connections and resources to navigate this space and to actually get to the point where you're awarded a license. So my mother and then another longtime family friend who is another dentist, he is an oral surgeon. And the three of us went after this license. So we won our license under the name Compassionate Herbal Alternatives.
Mm,
And back then, so this is like I said, 2014, 2015, everything. And we were applying for a medical only license. So, medicinal license, we would be selling to people who qualified from having specific ailments, and had medical cards. So, we were thinking on a strictly healthcare basis, at least going through the application process. Something I learned, during the year that we went through the application process. It's not something quick, it's not something easy. It's a very, very long, tedious, or it was at least back then, merit-based process where, I mean, you're coming up with thousands of pages of technical writing, documentations, attestations, all types of things that you're going to have to fill out. So that's what we were doing. We spent about a year doing that. um, I realized, and I did a lot of research, I was meeting a lot of people and networking. We need to come up with a name that will be able to transcend past the medical program into an adult use program, into the future, even when there's federal legalization, a name that could be a household name, a name that could feel comfortable for anybody coming in to shop with us, because compassionate herbal alternatives could turn away folks that may think that they're only recreational users. My secret is no one is just a recreational user because the plant is medicinal, whether you want it to be or not.
sure.
Um, but I realized compassionate herbal alternatives wasn't going to be it for us. We began kind of thinking about what direction we wanted to go into. And for me, it was really about education, eradicating the stigma, and making sure people felt comfortable no matter what. So Mary and Maine came out of that. It came from bringing cannabis, so Mary Jane, all of those nicknames for cannabis with mainstream culture and mixing those together in the intersection of those. So you'll see us a lot of times in our branding using a street sign that looks like Main Street, and cannabis, Mary Jane. We use a lot of Main Street in our branding. We also say things like welcome home. And the idea is kind of like outside of the store, is kind of the world. And then in our shop, your home, you can be safe, you can ask questions. There's no stupid question. You don't have to be embarrassed. You can kind of let your hair down and know that you're safe here. So yeah, that's kind of where the name came from. And my co-founders were a big part of it because, they're generations above me. So for me with them, I'm a little closer to like the street culture of cannabis. I understood that, if we take this strictly medicinal route and didn't make everybody feel comfortable as you we were going to miss out on a lot of opportunity as the industry evolved. So Mary and Maine is all about that intersection of cannabis and mainstream culture.
Well, you had a forward-thinking mindset, knowing that the industry wasn't just going to be stuck on the way it started, but the way it was going to evolve into, right? So, and I have a little birdie that tells me you own a company called Wise Co as well. So you were very wise as well on that. So awesome stuff. Well, look, obviously tapping into your current network, obviously family and people that could support you is a big strategy when you launch, as an entrepreneur. What were some of those initial things? You went through a year of kind of getting yourself approved or certified, but then did you look for a brick and mortar location initially? Was it online? Take us back to a little bit of those first, 3 to 6 months of actually starting the business and starting to put, the pedal to the metal on the business side.
Yeah, definitely. The cannabis industry is unique in kind of the startup phases because you do have to get a license from the state. The other thing is, this is a federally illegal industry still. It's still a controlled substance. We're Schedule 3 on the controlled substance list. And there's some talks about that changing in the next few years, maybe this year. We don't know. But all that being said, every single state has their own laws around how they license people, ownership restrictions, the types of licenses, how many you can own, all different types of things. What has really evolved in this space since I first won my license back it was the winter of 2016, I was awarded my license. Um, this advocates have made it very clear that the old way of these application processes made it so that typically anyone who was not independently wealthy and very well connected politically, and from a subject matter expert standpoint, you had no chance of winning one of these licenses. Typically, they are very limited in the amount that they allow in every single state. Some states will maybe not limit at the state level, but then at the local level, local municipalities will have the opportunity to limit how many come into their town, create their own application processes. So all that being said, there's a lot of pre-work that you have to do before you can even begin doing a lot of the typical, go out and look for your property and begin your build out. And you don't want to start doing too many of those things before you have secured a license. Advocates have made it so that previously, you had to go out and secure your property. So maybe go out and put an option on a lease or option on, a purchase of a building before you even knew if you would win. Sometimes you would even have to go out and do a certain level of drawings and MEP drawings. These things can get very expensive. You might have to go out and hire subject matter experts to complete operational plans, security plans, all of these plans that are required by the state that have very extensive requirements that you were expected to, be able to show that you were capable of executing. So this could cost people hundreds of thousands of dollars pre-application. This is what we did back in 2015. We went out, we found sample properties, not sample really. We found properties that could work. We were going out and putting options on leases of properties that we weren't sure if we would win because we applied in different districts at the time. And we knew that it would be a situation that you could win. At that time, you could win one. You had to be ranked the highest in the district that you applied. You could apply for multiple. So we were doing that. It costs more money every time you apply in different places. Now, advocates have argued that this is really making it extremely unfair, and especially for the people that have been most disproportionately harmed by the war on drugs, which are typically Black and Brown communities, which traditionally don't have, they're not independently wealthy, don't have a Rolodex of friends that are, typically don't have the connections and all of that. So now a lot of the processes have usually some type of preference for what they're calling social equity. Every single state defines what that means differently, but usually it's people who either come from a community or actually have been convicted of the war on drugs, of any type of possession, something like that. So, and typically now what they're doing is essentially awarding you the license if you qualify and turn in a very simple application of, yes, I will do X, Y, and Z. And then they'll allow you the time to go out and find the property, do all, and do the build out, come up with your SOPs that meet, match the level that the whatever administration or commission is requiring of you. So that has really changed and shifted, and it's allowing the opportunity for a lot more Black and Brown entrepreneurs to get into the space, and for folks that have just been touched by the war on drugs at all. So I think that's a good thing. I did not have that. I had to go out, find a building before we knew we won. We hired consultants. This was also back in 2015 when there were not a lot of me's out here talking about our experiences, and having community like my legal and licensed community where it's a bunch of folks going through the process and they're sharing their experiences. That didn't exist when I was going through the process. So and especially not people that typically looked like me. So it was just a little more difficult for me to navigate it, and I think we spent a lot of money unnecessarily just trying to figure it out, traveling around, going to every conference imaginable, much like people still do in every industry. And I think it's kind of good in the beginning. You gotta learn for yourself. And honestly, I do think a lot of those early connections I made were very, very important for me, and have proven to some of the people I met early on have proven to be really great operators. And I met a lot of the early MSOs. Those are multi-state operators, and typically the publicly traded companies that are in the industry. I met a lot of those founders back in 2015, 16 when I was first starting as well. And now
Mhm.
they have billion-dollar companies, and I can forge partnerships, and even just supply agreements, and just these, because it's been years of me developing these relationships. So I still think going to networking events and all that stuff is great. But that early startup in the cannabis industry, if you're looking for a plant touching entity, meaning you need a license to sell it, is really all about navigating the licensing process. That's what's going to take you the longest. And honestly, you do so much business planning during that process. You have to plan out, your whole budget, which it will consist of your construction schedule. You'll have to do so much pre-planning that when it gets to the time that you're able to actually execute, you kind of have the plan laid out, and it's very, very easy. It's never easy, but at least you have a plan laid out that is tried and true. And the other thing like to tell people is this is also how you build up your value pre-operational to even pre-fundraising. Because a lot of people in cannabis are like, how am I supposed to do this when I need millions of dollars, maybe for a grow? I was just talking to a friend that's a cultivator. He's saying industry standard is about $400 a square foot for a cultivation facility.
Mm.
I mean,
Wow.
10,000 square feet, that's $4 million. And that's a baby facility. That's a baby one. I have a grower in Maryland that has 500,000 square feet.
Wow.
Uh, these things can be extremely capital intensive. So you really want to have a really good plan and all that good stuff. So I actually think the licensing process is a really good exercise to do before you actually start going out and attempting to build something so sophisticated. Retail is not as capital intensive. I'd say, depending on where you're located, you could start a retail anywhere between $500,000 and $1 million.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, you set a foundation with the wisdom that you have, right? There's videos and all the content that you just talked about. There's learning experiences, so many cool stuff. And Go for CO community, Hope really just outlined, it's not just sometimes about, hey, thinking of an idea, putting in implementation. And there are businesses like that. But look at the journey that Hope had, right? She learned the industry. She went to seminars. She got backed by some funding of family. She invested in that space while still working, right, at the investment banking, and really kind of transitioning from entrepreneur to entrepreneur. And I will say, it's really interesting. I'm Colombian background, Puerto Rican, and Italian, and it's interesting to kind of in that Black and brown community how an industry or something that we always thought is kind of a negative thing, right? Um, has now elevated, right, some people and be able to grow something in that space. I jokingly always kind of say when I think about cannabis and weed is the movie Friday, where
Yeah.
where he says it's from the earth, man, it's from the earth. Weed is from the earth. So Smokey, so all that stuff. I love that movie. And but look, it's really interesting. You shared some of the dynamics and things. Well, capital wise, did you form an investment group beyond friends and family too? What were some of the ways that you looked at that component, having the investment background and
Yeah.
some of the data analytics that you had? I'm a commercial lender by trade day to day, so I'm always curious about the funding part of a business as well. Can you share that?
Yeah, and I think just to state some facts before, we can't go to the bank, they're not giving
Yeah.
us loans. Those are all federal programs. And the few banks that do lend to cannabis, first off, they didn't really do that back in 2015. And the few banks that do lend to cannabis now typically are not really lending to startups. They'll lend to companies with a proven track record, proven balance sheet, good management teams, typically you got to have been banking with them for a while or moving all your money over to them too. So, it's definitely a different type of environment with raising capital. Also, there's not a lot of VC funding in cannabis. A lot of VC funds are not going to touch a federally illegal industry. The few that have, I think they were all very bullish at one point, invested a lot of money, didn't see the returns that they wanted to see initially. So the investment capital has gone down on that side too. All that being said, so here I am back 2014, 2015. I had this idea. I didn't really realize how capital intensive it would be. I guess you think you know something until you start doing it, and then you're like, oh, like you hear what $1 million is, and then you realize like, oh, that's really not that much money, like in the grand scheme of trying to build certain businesses, and your bills are 20, 30, $100,000 at a time. $1 million to go quick.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't think I really understood and conceptualized this. I was also like, what, 22? So I just, I didn't really understand. I went to my mother who was like, yeah, I think this will be great, but we need more money. We're going to need a partner. I probably got $100,000 to put towards this. And that's me exhausting myself for you, Hope. That's me doing everything. I had $20,000 saved up from like, years of me saving money, and I thought I was doing something. I think that paid like one like legal bill and then it was gone. I was just so sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we went, so that's where our third co-founder came in, Dr. Bryant, who, like I said, longtime family friend, actually practiced right next door to my mother's practice. He's an oral surgeon. My mom was a general dentist. She always used to refer patients to him. So we went, we kind of devised a little business plan, said, hey, we're going to need about probably $2 million total to pull this off over the next 2-3 years. We also were applying for a grow and processing license at the time. We were not awarded that back then.
Mhm.
So we thought we needed that much money. We wanted to hire consultants, all that stuff. Dr. Bryant was like, yeah, I'm down. I want to do it too. So he came in, he gave us the original seed capital, but what we ended up doing, we didn't just move $2 million into a bank account. Pretty much Dr. Bryant, every time there was a bill, we called him, he paid it. And we did that for the first, until we won our license. We ended up spending about $500,000 in the pre-licensure phase. And technically, if we had not won, that money could have went up in smoke. And John, I mean, I have done it before. I've applied for other licenses post this time, and worked with clients that applied with licenses and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and not one. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, it's definitely a dog eat dog process. Also, a lot of the processes now are lotteries, because typically what happens whenever you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and you don't win something, you sue. So a lot of these states are always encumbered by lawsuits after these processes. So yeah, it's really a game. A lot of the people win, but it'll take like years of fighting and all that stuff. For us, we spent about that much. It was all it was all bootstrapped. And then when it was time to build out, we probably had another 100,000 out of that five. So we probably spent about four. Had 100,000 in the bank. We went to family and friends and raised another 200,000. So we had $300,000. We ended up closing on a property, which was not in the original plans. We wanted to lease a property, but we could not end up finding a property that made sense. I mean, at that time, the green tax was very real. Typically, anyone with a bank loan would not allow you to lease their property because they could call the note. So you had to find people who were independently owning properties that would lease to you, which were very far few in between. They also had to fit the zoning, which was unique. It's not just simple like, oh, retail zoning. Like, no, it was very unique. So we ended up, instead of leasing a property, like for instance, we looked at a 1,500 square foot property that they wanted to lease to us for $10,000 back in 2016. The answer is no. So we ended up finding a property that was off market. The owner ended up selling it to us. It just, that I always know I'm in alignment when things work out for me like that. And I'm doing the right thing, what God wants for me, whenever things just work out that don't make sense. And that was one of them. Um, and yeah, we used that 300,000 to close on the property. We ended up getting a loan from the bank that we were working with, separate LLC, non-plant touching entity. They knew the purpose of it, and they knew that we would be the tenants of the building as well. But it was a cannabis friendly bank, but they gave us a commercial rate because the people who own the property, myself and my mother, Dr. Bryant, are credit worthy. So we were personally guaranteeing these things. And we ended up paying that loan off in 5 years, and we owned the property outright off of the proceeds of the business. We ended up not really having to raise additional capital besides that, but we stayed extremely lean for years, wherein a lot of people were growing really fast and trying to acquire licenses all over the country as quickly as possible. We didn't really do that. A lot of it out of necessity. We just didn't have a choice. Now I look back and I go, wow, I'm so glad that things worked out like that, because a lot of people who took that strategy are no longer in existence, or are, juggling debt and equity, and, it looks good on the outside, but it's really a shit show on the inside. A lot of people are having that problem right now in the cannabis industry and living very stressful lives, and that is not our case. So, our lean strategy meant we didn't have to raise more capital. We continued to reinvest. We all worked in the business in the beginning every day. My mother and I still work on the business every day, constant, that I'm on phone calls, in meetings, doing something every day, whether it's working on the operations or working to help grow our business. But I don't work in the store anymore, but I worked physically in the store and did every role probably for the first 2-3 years, and barely paid myself.
Mhm.
Yeah, my mom and I, we lived together, then we still live together now. And we paid ourselves one salary to be able to pay our bills. And that's what we did for years. And it was a huge sacrifice, but it all ended up being worth it.
Well, you talked about a major word of my book. It's called alignment. The second chapter in our book, we talk about align right above, align on the side. Who can you connect with? Who are the people that will major influences? The doctor, your mom, yourself, put in the grinding work that it took. And look, 7, 8, 9 years later, you're talking about a very successful brand, you being on stages, being an influencer in the industry. Really kudos to you, Hope, for really kind of keeping the hope, right, through the process, and having that determination. So, Go for Show community, you can learn a ton from that last 2 minutes right there of what Hope shared in this journey. So, all right, so we've gone through funding, we've gone through certification, we've gone through process, some of those things that you're doing. Tell me a little bit about now starting to get into, hey, myself, my mom, investor working in this business. learning the traits of all the things that you have to do inside the day-to-day of working in it. When you start hiring the first person that you have, we love to talk about this. What was that like? Who did you interview? How did you start to post the position? What were some things that you were looking to do to start transitioning from in to on the business with an employee?
Awesome, awesome question. I'll answer it twice because I do have a unique story here too. But I'll talk about the part that is more relevant to everybody. So for me, in the very beginning, we did everything with friends and family. Everything. Even my GM, who is still my GM today, was with us in the war room when we were writing the applications. He's my mother's best friend. And like I said, he's like an uncle figure to me. And he's our GM and he's been there since day one. Our first real employee, our assistant manager, is our third co-founder, Dr. Bryant's cousin. So he
Oh,
came in, he actually moved up from Florida to come help us open the store, run it, had a passion for cannabis and was also looking for a new opportunity. So it aligned very well. Our next hire was also Dr. Bryant's nephew, who came in the business just volunteering. I remember we were having a friends and family night before we opened, and he volunteered to bartend. No, it was like, I don't need to be paid. I just want to help my uncle and all this stuff. And I'm like, people like that, the trend, if you haven't seen, these are all people that really bought into the vision and saw it and believed in us and genuinely wanted to support us. A lot of the times in the very beginning, it is family and friends. Even our inventory manager was my childhood best friend's or older brother. So these were all people that I knew had certain skill sets. So they weren't just random folks, though. They were people that I knew that had skill sets that I needed, that filled in gaps that other people on the team, my mother, Dr. Bryant, who didn't really work in the business, but gave the capital. Between my mother and I, what other holes do we need to fill? And all of these people were people we already knew. As we transitioned, kind of like, all right, so this original team, now we need to start to the beginning, we were all kind of wearing every hat, everybody. You kind of just get in where you fit in, make all these things happen. These are all the tasks that we have to get done from a compliance perspective and what we need to do to make the store run. But no one really had very clear defined roles. And I think that that's good in the beginning, especially for a founder to learn kind of all the different components of how their business works. But as we started to grow, and bring on people kind of outside of that level of loyalty, passion, and dedication that, our family and friends had, we had to really begin to define like, these are the tasks that have to be completed every day. And these are the roles that will complete them. So just being very clearly defined on your departments, your roles and responsibilities, who completes them. And from there, even getting really, really granular on your kind of the steps to complete those roles and responsibilities, which turn into your SOPs. So for me, how I began to get out of the business and so I could just work on it, was really developing kind of clear, like I said, clear departments, which had clear roles and responsibilities within those departments, and then clear steps, and then finding people to kind of fill in from the top down. Because in the very beginning, my inventory manager is the one counting herself. She's ordering herself. She's receiving herself. She's actually making sure everything is stocked on the floor herself. And now that, the business has scaled up, she has someone that receives for her. She has a team that does packaging and labeling for her. She has a team that keeps the vault safe. She has a team that just does inventory counts. She kind of manages the whole process and can be more focused on getting us good deals and all that good stuff. But it doesn't start that way. It doesn't start that way. You definitely have to work your way up to it. So not focused on that shiny thing where you have this big fancy team, being as lean as possible and kind of just adding team members. I would say, sometimes it's good to look at the big picture and then kind of say like, what's my bare bones version, to get it done? And then keep adding the cherries on top as you can afford it. As you reach a new level of profitability, it's like, okay, I can hire someone else. Continuing to reinvest into your business until you reach that bigger picture where it's like, all right, now I have, this store can reach its maximum potential with this team. Hiring someone after this point is just a moot point. I'd rather pay my people more
Mhm.
at this point. But yeah, it takes time to get there. It took me 5, 6 years to get there.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, at the beginning, there's a quote, many hands make light work. Because you incorporated family, friends, connections to help you. And you were there on the daily, right? 24/7, dreaming and weaving and understanding kind of what it took. But I love that you went from solopreneurish to business owner. Cash Flow Quadrants is a book I read many years ago, and it talks about going from employee to solopreneur, which is kind of like owning your own job. But business owner means what you just talked about. And I think a lot of people get stuck, even though it was one location, one license, and many things to do within the business from a retail perspective and inventory and all the things that you talked about. You saw the vision of, hey, if I could bring this person and start to teach her the inventory, the labeling, the supply, the ordering, that takes me off, and now I'm making $500 an hour doing X, right? These types of things. So I super love that you had that vision. I love that you took education, first job, you saw an idea, a vision, and bam, man, start putting it all together. And it didn't take overnight, right? You're one of those classic 10-year successes, right? So
Yeah.
it's a development of everything that you've done. So tell us, obviously you got to a level where you have people inside your organization running this location. What has been, more of the expansion story as well? Have you guys expanded into more product lines to meet demand, or is it more supply by having more stores? Like what's been the expansion role?
So over the past, probably we've been operational for 7 years. I'd say over the past 3 years, I have been really looking at different opportunities and ways for us to scale our business. I talked a little bit about it before, but there are a lot of ownership restrictions within the cannabis industry, right? This is because they're trying to protect the industry from becoming controlled by 2 or 3 major players with a lot of money that can go in and buy up licenses everywhere. So in the state of Maryland, you can own up to 4 dispensaries, one cultivation, one processing. Every single state has different rules around it. You have other states like Florida, who you get one license, but you must be vertically integrated and you can open up as many dispensaries as you'd like. So Truly, which is one of the largest, if not the largest cannabis company in the US, they have over 150 stores in Florida, just different license type, different thing. But in the state of Maryland, like I said, I can own up to 4. I own one dispensary. I have just recently, or someone on my team was awarded a social equity processing license, and we are working on a partnership with the cultivator. So that'll kind of take me out of the wholesale game in Maryland. I will have my one cultivation and processing, and we're looking at partnering with some other social equity licensees to look at other dispensaries. Um, I've been pursuing a processing license in New Jersey that is about to get operational. So super excited about that. And just so people understand what processing and all that good stuff. So cultivation is like growing the plant, a real grower, what you expect, growing the actual cannabis itself. And then processing is to extract out all the chemical compounds to create all the other products that besides flowers. So think vape carts, edibles, topicals, tinctures, anything else besides the plant itself. So I'm moving into that because I do believe in brands, and I do believe that the future of cannabis will be really, really driven by CPG products, brands. Right now, that's not really the lay of the land because of the way the industry is set up. It's very much so, and just historically in the culture behind cannabis is all about quality, right? It's
Sure.
all about quality. Brands, yeah, but like more about quality. So I think, just as cannabis becomes more mainstream, people are going to just gravitate towards brands. But right now, when you have states that, have limited licenses, you might have 20 cultivators. The brand selection is not going to be as robust as maybe you go to a California or Colorado, where there are thousands and thousands of cultivators and processors that are making even more products and brands for those dispensaries to choose from. So we are excited about the future of creating brands and products. And, we've really been focused on laying foundations to be able to own these products and own the production behind them, so that we don't have to create a brand, go to someone with these licenses and with the infrastructure to create the products and license it out and only get 10% of the sales. Because that's essentially how you would have to do it. And that's how a lot of brands will scale to multiple states. But we wanted to be very strategic, um, look at states like Maryland and states like New Jersey that really are newer to the brand play. And have a lot more opportunity, that may have really, really great retail, but not that many brands on their shelves, and create facilities where brands could come to us, white label, private label products, do toll processing. So yeah, we're really looking to help other brands make it to these markets that we think are great markets, have a lot of opportunity left, not oversaturated. The taxes aren't too high. Because some states, the regulatory environment is just not set up for it to win.
Yeah.
And that's why in California, it's a $3 billion market, but that illicit market is probably a $10 billion market in California. And it's because the regulatory market is just impossible to deal with. Taxes way too high. No one's paying for that. But Maryland and New Jersey have really great programs, and a lot more opportunity left, definitely from the brand side.
It's on a personal side, I always felt like, well, look, we're taking it from an illegal status with illicit sellers and underground and everything's, like trying to keep it away from the law. I was, happy to hear that that went into a phase where, like you did in 2014, you saw a vision of things, and it's got has to evolve, right? Obviously, there's still religious aspects to it and things that people don't agree with and all that type of stuff. But it's interesting that the community, and you're one of the head people changing it and influencing it to be able to learn the business of it and the real commerce behind it. So really awesome stuff. So I'm super curious, right? How do you market? Because it's cannabis. I don't know, it's not like you just see you on CNBC or some other channel, or do you have any Roku? Like, what's some of the aspects of it? You're the first cannabis business I've had on the Go for CEO channel, so I'd love to hear what is the marketing behind this. Is it all still grassroots because you can't be public about it? Like, what's that dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a really good question too, because people don't realize how difficult it is to market in this industry. We face a lot of restrictions, some
Mhm.
by the state agencies that, that regulate us. So like for instance, in Maryland, we can't do billboards. You go to some states, you see cannabis billboards everywhere. Maryland said no. Also in Maryland, we're not really allowed to show our logo outside of it being affixed to our buildings, right? So that means that we really can't sponsor events or anything like that. We have to get special permission. We have to prove that anywhere that we're seen, so a magazine, online, our website, is being seen by, it's like 70 or 80% of the audience must be 21 and older. We have to be able to prove that.
Yeah,
Why on all of our websites you see that age gate there, and we take that very seriously, where you might even have to put in your whole birthday. It's not just something like, are you 21, yes or no. um,
yeah,
is typically a little bit more involved. So there are a lot of restrictions with advertising. That being said, grassroots efforts are definitely the best. At the end of the day, retail, it's retail is very much so dependent on location, right? So you have like a 5 mile radius, and depending where you are, and what state you're in, you may have more dispensaries near you. So you really want to get in the community locally. And this is something that even people who are, large players in the industry and have dispensaries all over, they have very localized teams. Most of the time, their GMs and all that stuff are from the area. They have local like street teams that are going to community events and talking to folks. You got to do a lot of investing in keeping your customers once you get them, because that's definitely key. You can run ads, but it becomes a little bit more difficult because you have that age gate situation, but people are running ads. We've invested over these years, probably 8 or 9 years, because we started investing in this before we were open, SEO, and making sure that we were very visible online. There are kind of those search websites that you can be a part of, like Weed Maps and Leafly, where people can find you. Also, text marketing is huge in the cannabis industry. It really can drive sales. A lot of people now have native apps. So a lot of the same techniques that you would use a lot of digital marketers use these types of techniques. And other folks that have brick and mortar stores, if you ever run a restaurant, something like that. Those are the same types of marketing techniques. And what I have found also, just really like getting out there and being a part of your local community, doing your best to get some media in the beginning that really builds trust, credibility, and your SEO. I think that really helped us in the beginning because a lot of people really were invested in our story. I'm born and raised in Prince George's County, where my store is. The mother-daughter team and people hearing about kind of how I was raised and how I went off to school, did all these things, and came back home and built this business. So I think people enjoyed that story. And then, when the headline, "The Youngest Black Woman to Own a Dispensary," came out, it was even more support for my community that is, a predominantly African American community. So I think being able to do all of those things together kind of attributed to it for us. You can't really, so like you can be on Instagram, TikTok, you can be on social, but you have to be very careful. You can barely say the word cannabis. I know when I use the word cannabis, I typically block it out of my speech, like it's a cuss word. And I also don't like write out the word cannabis often. You'll be okay doing it like one time for me, but like my account constantly talking about it, and if they read it, it flags it, and a lot of cannabis accounts previously have been deleted or shadow banned. They just recently changed something very quietly where you can actually search for cannabis now on Instagram, so Meta products, but not on TikTok. TikTok, they even see some smoke. It's getting deleted. You can't talk
Wow.
about it or anything like that. So you can't sell on these platforms. We use at Marion Maine, if you check out our Instagram, we really use our Instagram to just showcase our culture, who we are, what the store is like, kind of the experience, so that, like-minded people can find us. And we'll push you to our website where, we talk about what deals we have and push you to go to the menu and all those things. We don't really do that on social like other folks will with digital products, or even, like I said, other restaurants or that. I think restaurants and people who sell digital products probably market the closest to us, with the exception of how they use social. But we do email, text, native apps, a lot of in-store signage. Think about merchandising, how you can. A lot of states will have restrictions around like how you can display products and all that good stuff. So
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, you're giving me the sense of a warrior, right? And business is war at times. And learning an industry, becoming a leader in it, diversifying the way that you do that business. I love the story of what you're getting into recently with the branding side of things and marketing like a certain product type of thing, and being able to private and white label it, all that type of stuff. So really, really cool stuff. As we end our interviews, we always talk about CEO, right, for Go for CEO. So client experience. I know we haven't really touched that, of what that looks like, of someone walking into your store and what that is going to look like. So we'd love to touch on that. E is for engagement, engagement with your employees, engagement with your vendors, engagement with supply, house, all that type of stuff. And then O is operational excellence, which are the tools, the systems, the softwares, the CRMs, all the things that you're using, lead magnets, all that stuff. So I always start with client experience. What's the difference? I mean, Mary and Maine, when they're walking in, what are they feeling? What are they experiencing? What's that client experience like for you?
I spoke about it a little bit, but really we want you to feel like you're at home. You're going to get greeted as soon as you come in. We check your ID, make sure you're of age. If you're a medical card holder, we'll query the state system just to make sure your card is active. Also, you have an allotment, so we just check how much you're able to buy. Then we let you into the actual dispensary area. And once you get in here, you'll see TV displays of our menus, different ads of different products and sales that we have going on, as well as empty packaging of different products around you. And then you'll get in a line when you are called to a register. We have 7 registers. We have a dedicated register to medical patients. Who also get priority. So if we have medical patients in the medical line, they'll get called ahead of all adult use patients. We also have a line dedicated to people who pre-order. So you can order ahead on our website. You can come in, pick it right up and go head on. But if not, you get in a line, then you can talk to one of our bud tenders and they will answer any question you have. If you want to come in and start, asking questions like, all right, I'm having a hard time going to sleep, but I don't want to wake up groggy in the morning. What's something good for me? I don't really like to smoke. They might recommend a tincture. They may recommend a gummy. A lot of people will go towards gummies for that. And kind of walk you through the differences between the options that we have. So it can be a very interactive experience if you want to. And if you're kind of just like, look, I want to get in and out, you could pre-order, pick it up, go. We even have a kiosk in the store if you don't really like talking to people. I'm one of those people. I don't love talking. So yeah.
No, come on.
Right, you're like, Mom, look at it. No, but when I'm like buying, running my errands and stuff,
Yeah,
like, I don't want to talk.
you just want to get
I
done with
just
it.
want to get
So,
in and out. So we have that experience for you too. Cash only or what's going on. We have an ATM for those who still do want to use cash, but we do have a debit card and credit card system. We do have fees associated with it. So we do also offer a system called Pay by Bank, where essentially you connect your bank to our online ordering system via Plaid. So a lot of people use Plaid for a lot of different other applications and softwares. And then you can pay for it, anytime, quick like that. You just come in, do that, and that's no cost to the customer. So, we found that to be a really great alternative to the fees that we have to charge with debit and credit card readers. And that's been a huge shift in the industry because when I first started, it was cash only and you had to go to the ATM and it was very cash intensive businesses are hard on not only the customer. I know the customer's annoyed, but trust us, we're annoyed on the back end too. Paying the bills is hard, getting the cash to the bank is hard. It's also dangerous, it's very difficult. So we've been really happy with the advances that the industry has made over the past few years. It's a
yeah.
it's a very welcoming experience at Mary and Main.
No, yeah. I mean, I remember hearing that some cannabis businesses were storing warehouses of cash and stacks, and they were only going out to American Indian, reservation banks, and they were only able to do this. And as a commercial banker day to day, like we have cash vault management systems, and they weren't even able to use it because the bank wouldn't accept you, right, as a business. So really, really interesting stuff. So E is for engagement. The last time that you just shared about like the cousin or the nephew and stuff coming into the business, that's employees. But are you doing things like employees celebration of the month, or are you doing things with vendors that you have like vendor nights that you'll go out to a Top Golf, or what are some ways that you engage from a day-to-day scenario?
Yeah, so we do a lot of these things, and we've evolved this from in the beginning, just kind of doing biannual nights out with the staff and all that good stuff to full on employee recognition programs where we recognize employees that are doing really well. We're in the process, and we really developed this point system, which was initially a negative point system, kind of like a reprimanding. When you're late, you get a point. When you do this, you get a point. If you get this many points, kind of like flipping a card in school. I don't know if anybody did that, but yeah, we used to flip cards, and when you got to red, it's like you had to go to the principal's office. Um, and that was essentially what the points program was initially. And then we realized, no, this needs to go both ways. Where you can earn positive points, and which can earn you different perks. It can earn you bonuses, access to different things that we have going on. And then a lot of our vendors do a lot of promotions, giveaways, all these things with our bud tenders, of course, because they want our bud tenders to enjoy their products and sell their products. So we do a lot of collaborations with our vendors for our staff. And then, especially my marketing director and my inventory manager, they do a lot of work with our vendors to just maintain the relationship. So a lot of, going to lunches and different things. And we definitely do. We're actually talking about planning an appreciation dinner for our anniversary, which is in September, for a lot of our vendors that have really been there for us over the past 7 years, which is crazy to say. So yeah, and that's evolved. We didn't start taking that on before we could though. So I tell people, don't try and pay people more than you can. Don't try and, get donuts for all your customers before you can afford to, because you'll bankrupt yourself trying to be the good guy. Build your business up to the point where you can do that. Build that in to a future expense.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, and I caught something here. Things are caught, not taught in life. Bud tenders. That's really cool. It's like the coffee places are baristas, right? Yeah, the cannabis industry. Is that something that you've trademarked yet? Bud
No,
tenders?
no, that's an industry term. And
Oh, okay,
it's
okay.
funny because it's one that a lot of people try and go away of. A lot of people will say like care specialists, or they'll try the sales associates, but everyone comes in, they're like, "We're the bud tenders,"
I
so.
love it. I love it. That's a cool thing, right? So awesome, awesome. What about software operations? Obviously, you had a brick and mortar, and that's great. But you mentioned, how do you receive the cash? How do you implement it into your, operating systems? What are things that you guys used throughout the years and using now?
Yeah, I absolutely love tech, software, automation, love where AI is taking us, all that. So I got like super excited with this question. Cannabis has a lot of software that is developed specifically for its use because it is a very unique use. Also, a lot of software companies just simply wouldn't work with cannabis, and even from like a payroll perspective, the big payroll providers are not going to work with cannabis companies. From like CRMs that send out text messages or something like that, like Twilio is not going to work with a cannabis company. So you have to work a lot of the times with companies that are tailored for our industry. We all have POS systems where how our customers can buy. There's typically a state mandated seed to sale tracking system that works with the cultivators that tracks the plants as they're growing with RFID tags. They know how much weight they're supposed to be losing from every stage and all that good stuff. And it tracks it all the way from the time they package it, and it's shipped to our stores and then gets to the consumer's hands. So it's a lot of inventory tracking, kind of logistics maintenance that you have to do through that process to track all of these products. And we're being held to that standard. In fact, we could be criminally prosecuted if we don't,
Oh, wow.
or if we allow new product to enter that supply chain. That's highly illegal. So POS software, the state seed to sale tracking, it's like a compliance system. Metric is kind of like the industry standard. Most states use Metric. We're all using some type of CRM communication software. A lot of POS softwares are starting to integrate them, because it's hard to get good reporting without the two being integrated. And typically the CRMs can email, text, do native apps a lot of the times, all that good stuff. Sometimes people are using, everyone has some type of payroll software. People are usually using QuickBooks Zero for accounting software, something like that. I'm really getting into like how we store our data and how to aggregate our data a little bit more to have better business intelligence.
Mhm.
and make decisions based on data. And sometimes, that's really hard in cannabis because a lot of our softwares don't have open APIs. They don't just easily allow them to integrate with each other and spit out reports the way that, a lot of companies or industries that have been around for years, legacy industries, their software is standardized. It's been around for years. It's tried and true. Cannabis software is new. It's not tried and true. It still has bugs. Some of them shut down. A lot of them are not opening up their APIs on purpose because they're trying to build up their software to be all in one softwares. So it's a lot of piecing things together. And I do think that once your company gets big enough where you're really like running on data, it's worthwhile to either invest a little bit of your own time into like understanding how software works and like I said, with automation or AI, really at this point, there's a lot you can learn and teach yourself and build. But the larger companies are totally hiring technology officers and building out their own softwares. Cultivators and processors have to have a whole nother layer of software to be able to manage their process. And a lot of it is done with tech now. A lot of the grow process is done without even touching plants a lot of the times. It's a fully
Mm.
automated facility. So these kind of enterprise softwares, the bigger companies are building their own. And I'd say the smaller ones, we are using softwares that are still really developing. Dutchy is probably one of the largest software players in the cannabis industry, and they build it's really turning into a full service ERP, but it's really like a POS backend software system that they're integrating CRM into as well. Really bigger with retailers. They're trying to get cultivators and processors to use it, but typically they build their own.
Well, Hope, you are super impressive. Very, very cool to hear your journey. Go for CO community. I hope that you listen to this interview a few times, and there'll be some shorts, some nuggets that come out of 30, 60 seconds that Hope shared today. So, Hope, tell us a little bit about how to get a hold of you. Are you okay with people contacting you directly? What's the website, all that good stuff.
Yes, yes. So I am most active on Instagram and LinkedIn. So if you want to just figure out what I'm up to, you can follow me on Instagram at I am Hope So Dope. It's a nickname I got in middle school, actually. Um, and then LinkedIn, Hope Wiseman. If you want to find out more about cannabis and how to get into the industry, definitely check us out at legalandlicense.com and legal and license on all socials. Yeah, and I'm any event that I'm at, please come up to me, speak to me. I'm excited to meet and talk to you.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Go for Show community, our first cannabis business owner happens to be the youngest Black woman ever in the industry. And just if you could just listen to the way that she's articulated everything that she went through, this journey has not been easy. It's been 7 years in the making. Mom, kudos to you for raising such an incredible woman. I'm a girl dad, of three girls, so I'm seeing my wife obviously instill into our daughters, and then hopefully my entrepreneurial side as well, and finance side of things. But you are very, very impressive, and Go for CO community. We need to support people like this, and this is one of the reasons we started Go for CO, because it's not just about the big names out there. It's about that small to medium-sized business owner growing something that's local in the community, maybe expanding a little bit and growing nationwide or something like that too. But not a big name, but want to be able to have some great content out there. So thank you so much, Hope, for coming on.
Thank you, John.